JD.
Just wanted to give you all a heads up that right now you can add the Madness Network to your Roku account right there by roku.com account, add Prom 2. Check out our preview. We got 10 of our highlighted shows up there for you to check out. Some of our best stuff from the last 4 years. Look, it's hard to pick 10 out of 2,600 videos, but we did it. And check it out. The campaign is launching soon, so be there. Peace.
Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
You are live.
All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. The Creative Cranium is on the air. I got my pal with me. I got JD Calderon. I got Doc Blalock. We're going to be talking about a topic tonight. Are comics dying? Are you ready for this, fellas? So I'll start out by going first. Hey, there's William. William, I'll send you a link. Here's the thing, right? You're going to see a lot of press lately. You're going to see a lot in the media about how comics are dying, right? And essentially what they're doing is selling a narrative there. What I mean by that, the story doesn't really tell you all the facts. The numbers are tremendously up in a couple of the key areas, while they're notably down in some others. Why don't we jump to JD first? JD, what do you make of this?
I mean, look, people are trying to sell clicks, right? They're trying to get their YouTube channels up. And they're selling clicks for the audience, and it's sensationalistic. I mean, look, the direct market, right, is down. If you talk to retailers, I've spoken to retailers. I live in New York City. We have Midtown Comics, a monster of a retailer. As my understanding is, I think they're like 4 or 5% of the market. You know, these 4 or 5 stores that comprises Midtown Comics plus their online business. So, you know, they're fine. Right. We also have Forbidden Planet. They're fine. But you go out and you start talking to people other parts of the country and they're not as fine. You know, we have a huge market here. And these are the 2 big last survivors. We have some other stores out in the island and some out in Queens, some out in Brooklyn. And they seem to be doing okay, but they pop in and out. You know, you see one come in and it's gone 3 years later. Maybe it'll last 4 or 5 years. But there's some that have been there for 20, 30 years. So. Right. You know,
generally speaking, comic book stores, what we would call an LCS, they've got long legs. Some of them in the 20, 30, some of them 40 years in the same place.
Correct. I mean, depending where you're at. But growing up in my neighborhood, I had 4 comic shops. None of them exist anymore. You know, and this was very close to where I lived in Spanish Harlem. Now, Uptown, there's basically just Midtown and the Forbidden Planet in Manhattan, you know.
Right. Alan, welcome. How are you, buddy?
Oh, hey, can you hear me? Okay.
I can hear you great.
Perfect. Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Guys, I want to introduce you to Alan. He is the author of Grandma Chainsaw and Death Knell. Am I correct?
Yeah, and Pocus Hocus.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
Hey, guys.
Good to see you, buddy. Good to see you. So we're just getting ready to jump over to Doc. So, Doc, I'll just ask the question this way then. So, obviously, some, I'll just say dealers, for lack of a better word. The reason why I choose dealers, you know, it's not really just comic books anymore, is it? You're going to have Funko Pops in there. You're going to have signed photographs, all kinds of nonsense. So, my question to you is this. We talked about in some of the key areas, the numbers are up, but in some of the key areas, the numbers are down. When you talk about a popular franchise like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, what is happening that these key numbers are down on these books?
Well, I mean, I'm going to state the obvious. The quality at the editorial level, the art level, the writing level for the big 2.
Well, be specific. Start with the editorial. What do you mean by?
The decision to be the one-trick pony and make every mainstream character that we've known and loved for decades suddenly transgender, homosexual, whatever it may be, these self-inserting writers and editors are hurting their fan base, and it is happening. You look at and I'm not up on the distribution numbers, but my latest understanding from my buddy Charles that runs a LCS, more Batman titles, more Spider-Man titles, but meanwhile, nothing else is selling because no one wants to see the bathtub talk of Superman. They want to see Superman. Mm-hmm. Having said that, the big two can shoot themselves in the foot all day long. I think that makes the market better for us.
Let me ask you a quick question. A couple of years ago, roughly 2012, do you remember when they did the relaunch, the New 52?
Mm-hmm.
That took a lot of heat at the time for being sort of new and inventive. Looking back on it, that was a good deal, wasn't it? The New 52 was, by contrast, I find the New 52 to be, some of it's pretty well written.
Yeah, but how long ago was that?
Well, it's 11 years ago, right?
And what's happened in the last 10 years with the big two,
Right. But now hold on. And remember, the title of the panel is "Are Comics Dying?" And it can mean a lot of things. But like when you talk about, let's jump over to Alan. Alan, some of these titles are just soaring, and some of these things are like, Dogman. Are you familiar with who Dogman is? And Captain Underpants from the same creator.
Well, I do know Captain Underpants. I grew up loving Captain Underpants.
Yeah. Well, his numbers are, and again, I hate to reduce things to, at the end of the day, we talk about numbers because a lot of us are businessmen, but it doesn't have to be about numbers. But when you see the kind of sales generated by Dogman or Captain Underpants, you have to go, oh my gosh, comics are thriving. Do you agree, Alan?
And I think it just gets to a point where it's like a paradigm shift between what people are wanting and what they're looking for too. And it's kind of crazy just because like those numbers, like, maybe people aren't getting what they want out of the big two. So then it sways back to a more comfort zone of what they already know that they're going to get from a writer that's relatively consistent, who doesn't change their pace. So I think that, you may see it later. You may see people swing back more toward the big two. And then the other side of it, our side, some of the indie stuff could take another dip. It is how it is. Yeah.
One thing that I'm fond of pointing out when I'm in a room full of indie creators is that when you talk about the sales of the big two being down a little bit, it's very likely that they are feeling the impact of a thriving indie comic community. Do you agree with that, JD?
No.
No,
no, I don't, because I don't think we impact them. I don't think we impact them in any way. They're 70% of the market. We're way on the back end. If you're talking about Image and Dark Horse and those guys, they make a small impact, especially Image, because they're 10% of the market.
Sure.
Dark Horse, Boom, IDW, Dynamite,
right?
They comprise maybe another 5-6%, but us, we're like 1%, if even. So I don't think we impact them.
Agreed.
Unless we start running up and hitting editors in the head with hammers, we're not going to make any impact with those guys.
Okay, I buy that. I think that. So I got his Brian's comment. I don't think comics are dead myself either. I do think that it's a kind of critical transitional phase. And let's jump back to Doc to expand on his idea here. Now, I don't necessarily agree with your viewpoint on this, Doc, but I know that it's a fairly well represented one. You can use a lot of facts to make your point. It's even a kind of, people love to say things like, well, comics have always been political. And if you didn't get that message back in the 60s, you're a dummy. Like it's a chance to prove you're stupid somehow. When the fact is they were much more conservative from the 30s up till about the 70s, like noticeably more conservative. Would you agree with that?
Certainly. The death spiral that I'm referring to is almost deliberately self-inflicted. And I've heard a lot of people throw out theories about why they would do it, this, that, and the other. I don't care why they're doing it. They're doing it. And the fans have noticed. I mean, you know, the movements like Iron Age and Comicsgate, they exist because of that. And it's hard to argue with their reasoning. You know, why they use the phrase subvert expectations. How about we meet or exceed expectations instead of subverting them?
Maybe a little bit of the and by the way, I don't particularly mind when characters are twisted around and this kind of thing. At the end of the day, if it's still a good story, it's still a good story to me. So I'm not as invested in, I guess, compared to some people, I care less if they change the look or the sexuality of the character, that kind of thing. It doesn't really bother me too much. But go ahead.
Can I interject? I mean, I feel it's all in the execution. If it's done by someone who's crafting the story correctly and they're doing a good job at it, I don't think anything is off the table. It just has to be done correctly. The problem is a lot of these other creators, they're ham-fisted, they don't know what they're doing, right? And they're just poor at their jobs.
No, hold on. Let's get specific. When I hear stuff like that, I want to know exactly what you mean, brother. So poor at their jobs.
Poor at their jobs, meaning when you're presented with a character like Superman, there's a lot of history there, right? So I don't think any of them, they go in and they don't research the history. They don't respect the history of those characters. You understand? And they don't respect the customers or the fan base that they're servicing. You got to understand. I mean, I worked for about 3 years as a professional, right? And I was presented material to write Tenchi Muyu, La Blue Girl, Demon B. I knew none of these properties. I knew nothing, zero zip about these properties that I was given to write. They gave me videotapes. It was all anime based. I watched these videotapes. I researched them, and I came up with material that the owners of these things enjoyed, and the fans eventually enjoyed. I mean, you have to go in. You have to take these things into consideration. You have to keep those characters whole, and that was what that was my main goal, was like, this is the character that I'm presented. I want to present it back the same way, in a different way, and have some fun with it. If I break the toy, I got to make sure that the toy is back together by the time I'm done, so that the next person who's going to take it over, has something to work with.
Right.
So
yeah, that makes sense. So hey, by the way, please welcome Mike Teener from Bad Buck Media. Come to join the cool kids.
What's up, Mike?
Mike, I'm glad you're here, and I've got just the question for you. Doc mentioned earlier how there's been some editorial failings on the part of the big two to sustain and promote some of their most loved properties. Am I phrasing that about right, Doc?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. So, Mike, you got lots of editing experience. What kind of thing, first of all, do you agree with that statement? And maybe you don't. The second thing is, what would you do to fix it? What could be done to more professionally correct and promote these beloved properties? Oh, you're muted. But we'll talk about you while you're off the air. I mostly wanted to invite Mike to see his clean-shaven face. As you guys know, he's typically known for his majestic beard and carefully trimmed facial hair.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we can hear you.
Hey, so I appreciate you filling in the gap.
You're welcome, buddy. I'm a trained professional. So listen, you're the editor, right? You're in charge of one of the big two. You got people in the wings starting to say things like, look, you're taking my beloved property and you're making it into something that I don't really dig all that much. Sometimes it is racial issues or sexuality issues. I think the problem is, probably much deeper than that. What would you do to fix it?
Well, that's a loaded question. Could the creator be wrong? Like, that's the thing we need to ask.
What do you mean by that? Be a little more specific.
Well, I mean, like if a creator's saying, hey, you're ruining something, I mean, is that always true?
Well, I would say this. Whenever there's a great change in something, there's always people sort of riding on the front lines. And like I said, this is the transitional time for the comics industry. And my guess is, I think it might not be the woke stuff. I think this might be the natural reaction to 10 years worth of superhero fatigue overload at the movies.
Sure.
And also you've got a little bit in there of, how do I want to say this? superheroes were very dark and gritty for a long time, so much so that there's a generation who thinks that superheroes are like the Watchmen and the Dark Knight, which, you know, of course, to some of the older generation, maybe, you know, superheroes used to be a much lighter fare, almost humorous fare. Did you agree with that?
So, man, that's just, these are big topics.
And by the way, you can see we're not
Just woke up from
necessarily
a
all
nap.
on the same page. There's a couple of different
Yeah,
levels.
I realize everyone's got a different stance on this. This is going to be, you know, we're getting different perspectives. I'm a very neutrally minded person. Reason why is I've been wrong so many times. So, you know, the minute that I start to speak up about something and say, I know how this should be, or I know the way this was and the way it needs to be going forward, I've been proven wrong. I've been like, so, like I'll go at it, try to go at this as humbly as I can. I don't know if anything's in danger. I just think things are changing. I think the industry, like the comic book format, if we're talking about specifically like a comic book format, is that right? Is that what we're all kind of covering, is just like the comic industry?
For the purpose, picture what we would call the floppy, the monthly issue.
Yeah. So, like, you know, demands of consumers have changed. We all know that. And everyone has so many options now too. So I think that's kind of what's affected things, right? Like we have so many different ways to consume entertainment now. And if you think about the principle of a comic, I mean, like there's a lot of restrictions with it. You know, if you're reading it in a physical format, you have to consider the turn page or the page turn with the way you tell stories sometimes. And that can cause some obstacles and restrictions in the way that you tell a story. Now, obviously, there's the savants who can navigate right around that and have for years. But I would call those people the touched, you know, and there's not that many of those, right? The rest of us have, a lot of challenges telling stories in the format. And I think as new formats have come up, with streaming and these digital apps or media apps like TikTok and stuff, we're consuming information a new way. Comics in its original format is kind of archaic at this point, if you really think about it. We've been talking about print is dead for a long time,
right?
And, you know, it's there's a truth to it, but then there's us. I imagine everybody on this call prefers a physical copy of something, right?
Yeah.
All right. But look at our age group right now. Like, I'll just say, are you guys over 30? I'm over 30. All right.
So, a little bit.
30.
Yeah. So if we're trying to keep this thing going and keep it growing, there's an obvious market that we're not tapping into, and that's the next generation of readers.
Right.
And that's because we're expecting them to come over to our table when we really should probably be going over to their table. So I don't know if the physical format's really going to be where it's at in the future. So we're going to have to kind of take that into consideration. And then there's a new generation of people that want new types of stories. Like the stories that we prefer were the ones that we grew up with and what we familiarize ourselves with. And we say, this is how this character needs to be. This is how we've seen it. This is how we experienced it. And so therefore it needs to stay that way and preserve that content as it was originally conceived.
Right.
But, you know, I always think about John Carpenter's The Thing. All right. The original The Thing, it was a good movie, but I prefer the remake.
Oh, hey, by the way, I lump me with you. I am one of the people you're talking about the 2011 remake?
No, I'm talking about John Carpenter's remake because it was a like a 50s, 60s film originally.
Oh, yeah. Right. The Thing from Another World. Yeah. Did you see the one with Elizabeth Elizabeth Winstead?
What's her name?
Scott Pilgrim's girlfriend. Winstead.
Yeah.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead.
That's it. Yeah.
It's a pretty good version. It's the prequel to John Carpenter's version.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting they did it. But like you could say, like right there, those remakes were very different from one another, and which ones really transcended time? Like the remake did. You know?
Yeah. Good point.
All right. So I'm pretty sure there was probably a group of people that had saw the original, heard John Carpenter was going to get his nasty little fingers on that. And, you know, here we are 40, 50 years later saying, well, that's the better one. Right. Yeah. And it took a whole new audience of people to agree to that. But, you know, that's just a small example. So there's always going to be stuff like that. And we're not going to like it, but it's just a fact.
Let's break up the question here. Let's break it up just a hair. Yeah. And let's move to Doc here on this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up to graphic storytelling, right? Here's what I mean by that. You know, comic books used to, for lack of a better word, they were a very simple form of art to where somebody could read, you know, if you were 50, you could read one. If you were 6, you could read one, right? Simple panels, simple storylines. Then over years, comics started to evolve a little bit, especially throughout the 70s and 80s. And that's where you started to see more what you and I would call an epic storyline. Chris Claremont's X-Men, starting to take on social issues and drug addiction, this kind of thing. So we already know that comics go through these big changes and that they sort of become more complicated. My sense is, and this is what I want to see if you agree or not, that the younger generation finds it difficult to relate to these really dense matters. That's the reason why the faster flowing ones like anime and manga and Dogman, these things sell like crazy because they're not so dense. I think it might have more to do with that than with the woke storylines. What's your 2 cents on that, Doc?
I still disagree. If you take, what is the appeal of Daredevil?
He's blind.
Daredevil is blind. He is a tortured soul. He roams the streets at night. If he suddenly identifies as a pink bunny rabbit and goes out to protest big petroleum, you've lost Daredevil. That's not Daredevil anymore.
Well, you got a little hyperbole there. He didn't do that one, did he?
I don't care if it appeals to a certain crowd. All right. The character is who the character is. If you want that character to exist, create it and see if it sells.
Okay. Yeah, I'd buy that. That.
But you know, to address the thesis of the discussion, are comics dying? No, they'll go through another tortured chrysalis period as they have done before, and they will emerge the better for it, because it's not sustainable to keep destroying the legacy characters. Like JD said, you're just a steward of that character while you're working on it. It's not yours to break. So you hand it back in as good or better condition than when you borrowed it to play with it, so that generations later can enjoy it. If you totally want to make something new, make the something new and see if it stands up to Superman, Captain America, Thor, Daredevil.
Gotcha. So we talk about, just about all of us are writers and creators in this room. When we talk about making new characters, let's tag on to what Doc said here. I'm going to jump over to Alan. Alan, he's talking about making new characters. It's a little bit of the creative destruction of the marketplace, meaning that sometimes these newer characters displace the old characters. When you make your scripts, do you ever intentionally try to say, well, this one will knock Batman out of the picture? Or how do you choose the characters?
To not to sound like I'm choosing a wand at Hogwarts, but you let the characters choose you, right? Like,
sure, yeah, that's pretty good.
I think that if you go in, I mean, because I think we've all fallen victim to this before. Like you spend a lot of time, effort, and energy, and you're putting your all into a character, for example, that is leading your story. And then you're thinking while you're writing, oh, well, I don't want them walking around talking to themselves. I guess I'll just make some stupid ass sidekick for them to have. Right. And for some reason, that sidekick you spent no time on for character development or anything is the one that just takes off and is the popular one. That's the one people want to see more of, right? So I think that is often, for myself, just some kind of proof there. I think that if you think too much about a character, then it may not experience the heights that you want to see, instead of just subconsciously writing what you feel, right? Because I think that a lot of times, especially reading novels, whenever you're trying to break down what an author's meaning, I sometimes think that they didn't even know what they were meaning whenever they were writing the thing. I think it's up to us to try to figure out the subtext in it. And again, I think that goes the same way with scripts. I think every script starts off with us wanting to tell a fun story, and then the message potentially comes second. And then the characters
I want to ask you, and I don't want to get too far off the track, but Alan, I want to ask you a quick writing question then, because I'm really interested, and this is the kind of thing I like to talk about on this show. So when you are making your scripts and you start at square one, your story comes before the characters?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Gotcha.
Yeah, because I have an idea for a story that I'd like to tell because I think it'd be fun. And then I try to make the characters fit into that world that I'm making. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that. So, hey, let's jump over to JD. JD, you've got some interesting characters too, right? Now, I'm going to ask you a very specific question. Based on what Doc said, there's kind of two speeds, right? There's either I don't want to say most. Many of your great indie comic creations are a little bit homages to something else. And, there's nothing that's too original in this world anymore, speaking directly. Would you say that your characters, they're more homages to something you love? Or are they more something that you wanted to be super creative to displace the things that you loved?
I don't know if I ever really wanted to displace anything. I just wanted to tell a unique story, right, with a unique character. As unique as I can make.
Can I ask you the question I asked Alan? So when you start out with Oswald, do you use the story first or is the character first?
Well, it depends, right? I finished the series, and when I was writing, I guess the third arc in the series, that was complete plot, right? Like I knew the character, and I knew where he had to go, so that was complete that. But before that, a lot of those stories were just about the character and building him. So it just depended where I'm at in the mythos when I'm working.
Cool. Please welcome Tom Hutchison. You guys know Tom, right?
What up, Tom?
How are you guys? What's going on?
Thanks for jumping on. And Tom, I definitely want to ask you the same question. Really, we're talking about our comics dying, and I want to hear your thoughts on that. But I was just asking Alan and JD this. When you make your scripts, do you start with story and then figure out the characters as you go? Or do you start with your character and then they populate the story?
That's interesting. It kind of varies based on, because I do a lot of different stuff. Some of it's, based on IP, like the Wizard of Oz and things like that. So there's a little bit of kind of existing story that I already have, and then I modify it as needed for my vision of it. But like when I created Critter, for example, which is my first ever comic and it's my superhero book.
Congrats on getting into the previews, by the way.
Oh, thank you. It started with the character, right? It was designing a superhero character, designing the look, giving her the powers, equipment, whatever that I wanted her to have. And then from there, I started to, once I had sort of the visual element of it, then I started to create the world around her and where, ultimately the story has to go. But there's been other times where I've come up with a story first. I'm like, oh, this would be a cool story to tell. And then how would I tell it? Am I going to tell this in a, sort of a purely fictional manner? Am I going to tell this with an existing IP like The Legend of Oz, where I turn Oz into a Western? Is it going to be historical fiction? So I've done it both ways.
Right. Like the voice, in other words, like, for example, True Grit. Hey, it's a Western, but it sounds like that because of Maddie, the girl telling the story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a great example. Doc, how about you? Did I ask you, do you do characters first or story first?
It's a little weird for me. The concept comes to me kind of like a synopsis all at once. The story, the protagonist, the antagonist, and it's just all there from jump.
Gotcha. Yeah, I do the characters first. It's voice. And Mike, did I see you? Yeah.
Character first. Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes even, and by the way, audience, if you're following to try and do what I do, probably don't want to do what I do because I do about everything wrong. I also usually start with dialogue. It's what they said and it's worked in.
Exactly. I'll hear a line of conversation and I play with that in my mind. I roll it around. Who said that? What would the response be? Why would that be the response? And who would make that response? And it just grows from there. The Damn Dirty Thing, it spawned out of I had just got done watching Casablanca again, which is, of course, the greatest movie ever made. And I was listening to Rick's quip, when he's being interrogated by the Nazis and they say, "What's your nationality?" He says, "I'm a drunkard." And it's just a throwaway quip, you know, but that banter kind of triggered some ideas in my head, and I heard a little conversation. I went, oh, let me go write that down and build on that.
Sure.
Story's born.
Yeah. So let's break it out into some more dealer questions. We're talking about our comics dying, and one of the things is that the LCSs have to be agile and adept enough to survive in what can be pretty challenging market conditions. But like we were saying before, some of them are kind of thriving. So Mike, let's start with you. What are some of the things that stores could do, secrets, if you will? And like I say, maybe again, I'd hate to say it's not just comics, it's going to be other things, but what kind of things could be done to increase sales?
I'm not going to be popular with this. It's been a long time since I've been in an LCS.
Same.
You know,
Well, hold on. Stop right there then. Can you tell us why that is?
Well, I don't think they have what I want. And I think what I want is to see something like I haven't seen before. So a lot of these comic shops, and I get their struggle. Like, I get it. Like, all right, I wouldn't say that it's like, it's not, I wouldn't think of like, hey, if I was going to start a new business today, I'd start a comic book shop, you know, like that's not, if I was going to say, hey, let's make some money, let's make a comic book shop.
Right.
You know, so these people are just trying to survive and trying to figure out how they can keep doing what they've been doing for the last 20, 30 years or however long they've had the shop.
So I turn over the keys to you. I give the keys to Mike.
Yeah.
And congratulations. Tomorrow's your first day. You open up the doors. I'm here to increase sales. My first step is what?
I got it. I would expand the range of the library. I would minimize how much of DC and Marvel I'm carrying. Now, here's the thing. Every one of us on this call knows that I would lose money doing that. All right. But if you're here to promote the future's crowdfunding, and crowdfunding is where you go to get things that you can't get in the comic book shops.
And the
we
future's
pride
also...
ourselves. Like we talk about it. We tell people on every Kickstarter, you will not find us in shops. That's a point of pride. You will not find us in previews. You will not get us anywhere else. You get us directly to you. And that's what makes us special. So as a comic book shop, I have to think, do I have something special? Do I have something that people can't get anywhere else? Right. And do I have reasons for people to keep coming back besides coming to get what they already know they're going to get? Right. Like, are they going to browse? Are they going to shop? Or are they just going to walk over and pick up the things that they're used to reading and all those things? So I would think, I think you need to expand your library, and I think you need to expand your product line, and I would take some risks. So I would commit to being in the red for the first year or two, but I would make it very event heavy and make sure that I could attract a lot of creators into the shops, a lot of cosplayers, a lot of different things that I can do to bring people into the shop that aren't even into the comics. It's like a con for four walls, like a small 4-wall business that would be treated like a con. That's probably how I would do it.
That's a pretty cool idea about the Kickstarter gift cards at comic shops.
That is a good one.
Okay, so let's hear some other viewpoints. I'm going to go around in a circle. Tom,
well,
hey,
let me jump in real quick here, because what Doc and Mike just said is so telling, that they haven't been to a comic shop in so long. Yeah. And like Mike said, because he doesn't think they have what he wants. That's the perception of a comic shop, folks. I mean, it's everybody that thinks they know what a comic book shop is, thinks they go in there and they buy Superman and Batman and people go home. This industry is woefully behind the marketing and advertising elements that, I mean, we all know that Pepsi exists, right? But Pepsi is always going to be doing ads for the Super Bowl and wherever else, right?
Good point.
Marvel and DC specifically, because they're the big boys, they have done next to nothing in the last 40 years to create a marketing campaign that comics even exist, much less that a comic book store exists. Now, there's a couple of exceptions. Obviously, when the New 52 happened, they did some commercials on Cartoon Network and stuff. That was cool, but that only lasted
a month. They also had there was little bumpers at the end of certain films.
Yeah, but that was like a month, and then it was gone. You know, back in the 80s, they would tie in their IP with G.I. Joe and Transformers. It would say, hey, follow the adventures of Transformers in Marvel Comics, blah, blah, blah. But that's really it. Marvel and DC, over the last 40 plus years, have forced the the retailer to do the advertising for them. And retailers don't have money to do that kind of stuff,
Right.
not in any significant manner. But
Right.
good Lord, Marvel and DC can't put together a couple $1 million a year for marketing and some ads somewhere where it would help retailers. Come on, man. You just made $1 billion on a movie. Throw a couple million at the comic book market. But it almost shows me that Marvel, well, not Marvel and DC, because we got to go further, Disney and Warner Brothers or Discovery or whatever, because you got to go up the corporate ladder. It's almost showing me that they really don't give a damn about the comics world, the comics element, because if both of those comic book worlds disappeared tomorrow, Disney wouldn't notice that on their spreadsheet. They'd be like, well, who cares? We can send all of that hassle over to the movies, and we'll make more movies and whatever. Comics are a problem because no one knows that they exist. Or more specifically, they don't even know where to get them. And shops have dwindled and dwindled and dwindled and dwindled, where we used to have thousands upon thousands. Now it's estimated we've got about 2,000 shops. Maybe about 500 of them order indies in any sort of real quantity. So like you guys were talking about, expand the library and so on. The shops that I've seen that do expand the library are the ones that are succeeding. They have retail owners that are invested in the business significantly. They understand that you can't put all of your eggs in two baskets. And they have indies on the table all over the place. A local place here, Comic Signal, does all kinds of indies. When he found out that I was a local creator, he jumped at the chance to put my books in his store. So it's a combination of, we need awareness, general awareness to the public, like how do we even get comics anymore? Right. And then it needs to go to the retailer to, and I hate to say this, but like these guys just said, take a little bit of chances, but it's going to take effort to do it. You say, okay, I'm going to buy whatever Scout Comics and put it on my rack. You need to know what it is you're buying, who's doing the things. You need to be able to talk to your audience about it, because if someone decides, well, I'm not buying Marvel anymore, you don't want to let them walk out the door. You need to say, hey, look at Dark Horse. We've got these creators. We've got IDW. We've got Image. There's other things for you if you're done with Marvel and DC.
Let's keep moving around in a circle. So, Doc, did I ask you about what you do to expand your sales if you're a comic store owner?
No, but if I owned a comic book store, you got to do what we're doing right now. You get your butt out there on social media, YouTubing to an audience, letting them know, hey, this week, here's what we've got in. It's free to advertise. So use every free means at your disposal, because Tom's right about where the money should come from for advertising, but it ain't. So you've got to take advantage of every free resource you can get your hands on to get it out there. I would, other than that, topless babes and boobs. And booze.
You're here.
JD, how about you, man? You're a comic book store owner. I give you the keys. It's day one. You're going to try and expand the industry. What do you do on the first day?
Well, I mean, from a single store, you have to find out what's in your area and what's in your community, right? I think it's important for outreach. If you have a school, a college, that sort of thing, where you have young people, you go out, maybe talk to the administrators of those schools, try to find some commonality. Try to find some product that these schools could use in their curriculums. Try to find maybe some way you can get some of those students in your shop to buy, right? Try to get dollar boxes out to them, get them the cheap stuff, and safe, comb through them, make sure there's no Fausts in them, and just make sure that you can get some of these books out into their hands. And I think the best way to do that is by having inexpensive comics available. I've been to dozens of comic shops, and I don't think I've ever been in one that doesn't have a dollar box or a 50-cent box in it.
Yeah. Right.
And who doesn't like thumbing through on occasion through a dollar box? You just thumb through it, and once in a while you find something like, hey, what the hell is this? Yeah. Right. And this is how you get some of these kids in there, because truth of the matter is, when I was a kid, my dad could give me $10-20. I could walk into a comic shop, walk out with 20 books. Right. Right. They were 50 cents. They were 40 cents. Now you give a kid $20, you got what, 4 books if you're lucky,
or one good one,
right? Right. So short of handing a kid $100 or $200 every time they walk in a shop, there's not a lot of experimentation going on. But you give them $20, you shoot them over to the dollar box. They can pick out a bunch of books and hopefully fall in love with something. And I mean, and that's the thing. You have, if we were talking about trying to expand the market, we got to try to bring the kids in. You got to give them stuff they can afford. And the fact of the matter is why we're losing them to manga, because one of those little books are $10. One Takaban is $10, right? Or 12 or 13 or whatever it is. But it's 200 pages as opposed to a 22 or 24 page.
And it's presented in the format that I mentioned earlier, which is, and again, I'm not disparaging anything about a less dense visual format. Like, I'm a comic guy. I love sequential art. Maybe that's what, it's just part of the historical generation that we're in. It's the meme generation, right? It's a very visual generation.
Manga has something that comics doesn't have mostly, and that's ease of use. You walk into a bookstore, you're looking for whatever, One Piece. It says on the shelf, One Piece, volume 1, volume 10. Ease of use. It's sitting right there. Comics technically has that because we have trade paperbacks that you could say Avengers, whatever, 1 through 10. Right. But most retail stores won't carry 1 through 10. They'll carry 1, maybe 2 or 3. And then if you want the rest, we'll order it for you. So ease of use and just instant gratification. I need volume 7. Shoop, I'm buying volume 7. You go into a comic book store, that doesn't happen. In the larger sense, of course, there are always exceptions to the rule, but ease of use and just like, hey, what does somebody who just watched the Avengers do? And they walk into a retail store and say, hey, I just watched the Avengers movie. What should I read? There's nothing that they can be put in the hands of that new reader that is going to have anything to do with what they just saw in the movie. That's another.
I was ready for that question though. I'll give them Avengers versus X-Men. Remember that one?
Well, sure. Yeah. I mean, there's always like, here, read this Avengers, but it has nothing to do with what they just saw in the theater.
Right. Not what's currently coming out does not support.
Right.
Why didn't the MCU blockbusters have tags on the end of the movie saying, hey, go to your local comic book store and check out this new issue, or here's what's going on in Marvel today? They didn't do that. They missed. What an opportunity they missed.
Well, hold on. Before we get off this, Alan, did I get yours if you were a comic store owner?
No, because I'm bad at business anyway.
Okay.
So my business would immediately crumble and
to the ground. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I do think that, what I will say though is, it's work smarter, right?
Work smarter.
We're in an age now where liking superheroes is cool.
Yeah.
And that's awesome, right? And it's just finding how to capitalize on that market. Again, like was already stated, community involvement. That's awesome.
Community involvement is one of the great ones, by the way.
Yeah.
Something that I'll point out too, though, that Disney did with some of their properties is they put out animated series to kind of complement some of the film franchises, right? Like they did a Guardians of the Galaxy animated series. I think we've seen a Spider-Man series from them. I might be wrong on that one, but we've seen them kind of dabble with introducing these properties to kids, younger audiences, just to generate an interest with a younger demographic. And I think that's good. I think that's smart because, again, that's a more visual format, I suppose, than even comics, right? Because that's people. I don't know if our current generation is more readers or less readers and more video watchers. Like that's what you got to ask yourselves.
Or they're into this less visually less dense experiment. You know what I mean?
Right,
it seems it's trending that.
TikTok.
Well, again, it's like they made the cartoons. That's great, but there's still nothing directing them to the core product anywhere.
Hold on, I'll answer this question. I forget, a couple of you guys know this, but I did used to be a comic book retailer. I had Planet X Comics here in York, Pennsylvania, and we were somewhat innovative in the advertising kinds of things. And I will let you know, I'm very disappointed with all your answers. They were all very weak. So I'm going to give you the real answers right now. The first thing I'm messing with you guys. The first one was when you go see the movie Batman, they had a thing called the Tumbler. It was like one of the Batmobile versions, and you could go up and get your picture taken with it. And if you brought your, the theater's right next door to us. You bring the ticket stub over to Planet X, and you could get your picture taken, and you'd get 10% off comics. That was one. Yeah. The second thing, about once a month or sometimes twice a month, we had learn to draw your favorite Star Wars character. And that was pretty popular. And then what we did before those days, this was shocking and new and different for comic book stores. We ran a vacuum cleaner through it so it looked clean.
Oh, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind.
And what happened was mothers started to come and bring their kids, right? It was the cool thing. Then we got into kid stuff, and then we had mom's night. And it was like a discount when you brought your little kid. So my point is there are many things that you can do, and it does tie directly back to what Alan said, which it's about community engagement. In the sense, it's not always about getting somebody to buy a comic book, right? It's about getting them to understand this visual art form and the pop culture that surrounds it. It's actually a much bigger thing than any of those.
Yeah, but, and this is the trick. All of that, again, takes effort on the part of the retailer. And I know a lot of retailers that put a lot of effort into their store. I know a lot of retailers that are like, I will do signings with dudes. I will do all this stuff that you just talked about, those kinds of things. I know them. I've worked with them. But most comic book shop owners, sorry guys, they want to open their box. They want to get their X-Men books. They want to put them on the shelf, and they want people to walk in the door and buy them. That's the effort that they want to put in. That's the bulk of it. Because if you have 2,000 stores and 500 of them are buying significant indies, those are the stores that are putting in the effort because they're learning about, okay, what does Scout do? What does Zenoscope do? What does Aspen do? And they figure it out and put it on their shelf. But other stores are just like, I can't be bothered to figure out what else there is. I have to focus on my Batman people. And that's not to say to neglect the Batman people, but there's so much more than the big two. And that's how you expand your brand.
Let's circle back to that, right? Like we have, and I'll give this one to Doc. Okay, so we're talking about ways to boost indie sales now in LCSs. So here's the thing. LCSs are already kind of struggling to sell copies of Justice League. What can we do? And this is for us as creators. When I say we, how do we make it attractive for them to carry our product line?
No risk for them, I would say.
Well, by no risk, you mean you got to give them the inventory for free,
like consignment. Right?
Yeah. That's how I do it.
Yeah, that's how I would do it. Because they're like, it's just like us. Like we wouldn't spend money on artists that we know wouldn't make us money, right? Like, do you ever choose an artist that you think, they're cheap and I might not make a profit off of it? Like everything is strategically placed. Like you spend money on what you think is going to give you a return, right? And there's no reason for them to think that they're going to get any return from any of our properties.
Right.
We have no financial data to really show them that. We can say, well, look at my Kickstarter.
Are you guys?
That doesn't mean anything for them.
Are you guys familiar with a creator by the name of Nate Simpson? He wrote a book called Non-Player.
No.
Heard of it? Yeah.
It's pretty cool. It's like a video game. It's very saga-ish, very carefully drawn and beautiful line work. Mike, you'd love it, by the way.
Yeah.
I would say this. He called, well, I don't know how many he did, but I was a comic book store owner at the time. And he was just going through the listings and he called every owner. He said, hey, if you'll order 10 of my books, or it might have been 20, I forget the number, but I'll send you a couple of promotional posters and I'll sign them. And they were like amazing posters. So I was like, oh yeah. And plus he was enterprising enough to call the store. Like, for example, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I could probably ask Tom this one too, but I've never called comic book stores yet and asked them to carry my products.
No, that's pointless. I won't say that's pointless, but when I started, I actually was walking into comic book stores. Like I scoured where I was in California at the time. And then we moved up to Las Vegas and we did it there, and Arizona, and we did it there, just trying to keep it local and just walking into stores and trying to get a retailer to pay attention. The first thing was always, well, I don't care unless you're in previews. And I'm like, dude, I'm in previews. Let me show you where I'm in previews.
Right.
I had one guy who I was like, well, let me just give you some books. I will drop books off here, physical copies. Take them, look at them, tell me what you think. Well, no, I'd prefer it if you just send them to me. And I'm like, no, they're in my car, like 50 feet from here. I will give you books. And he didn't want them. He literally didn't want them. He was like, no, I'd prefer if you just sent me PDFs to look at. I'm like, wow, man, it's brutal when you talk to stores that don't want to put the effort in. And so it's one of the reasons why I backed out of the retail market for the most part after I left Aspen and just went to crowdfunding, because I just kept seeing more and more butting my head against the wall in the retail side of things. And I just worked with the people that I knew that were like, hey, I still want your books. And I'm like, we will work directly with you. I have no problem with that. And we still do that to this day. But, my thought process of like, how do I go back into Diamond or Lunar or whatever and try and get my books back on their shelves? That's too much effort.
Let's, by a quick show of hands.
Go ahead.
By a quick show of hands, raise your hand if you still make frequent visits to an LCS.
Yeah, I was just at mine a couple days ago.
Once a month.
Once a month. Okay, so that's not even 50%.
Let me address that real quick, Timothy.
Yeah,
I was
go ahead.
just talking with Justin Sweet, Chrome Dog, and he's spot on. If the LCSs are greeting Tom at the door with that kind of reticence, you go get spinner racks yourself. You stock them up yourself. You take them to your local mom and pop convenience stores, grocery stores, drug stores. You say, hey, no cost to you whatsoever. I'll set this up. Here's our profit share consignment, and I'll keep it stocked. And if you don't want it in here after a month, I'll come back and get it.
I think you have to have that kind of service level, right? Like you have to have that kind of attractive proposition to where
you put damn good books in there, like Pariah, Blood and Mud, and
sure.
Now, something like there was an analogy that someone like popped up whenever we were talking, but there was an analogy that someone once compared local comic book shops to, and this might be one of the reasons why I kind of think like, hey, I think they're going to continue to struggle, and I think Tom's notes on that, I've experienced that too, So, but like radio. Do you guys listen to the radio anymore? Like when you get in your car, do you listen to the radio?
Yeah, I do.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, like, they just grab like Spotify or whatever, and they just choose to listen to whatever they want to listen to. And they Spotify listens or pays attention to what you listen to and recommend things to you based off of what it's learned about you, right? Radio doesn't do that necessarily.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I actually do use a playlist.
So, but the point is like, radio as it was and now is very different. You had a person that just was the gatekeeper. This would get on the radio, this would not, right? And they made the decision for everyone, right? Mm-hmm. And comic book shops are kind of like that.
Yeah.
And
okay, so let's try just as a marketing decision. Ready? And we'll each take a crack at this one. I'm going to start with Alan. Alan, you got your local comic store rocking and rolling. You guys are making sales. It's open. I give you $5,000 to spend on your marketing budget. You can either A, buy $5,000 worth of Google ads, or B, you get $5,000 worth of indie comics that you'd be able to sell potentially for, let's say, $20,000. Which would you take?
God, I think I'd take the ad space. Honestly,
I know Mike's shop's going out of business. He's getting ready to say he'll take the books.
Yeah, just because if you build it,
I'd
they
run
will
one
come.
into the ground.
Yeah,
I know for a fact I would.
Yeah, I if you build it, they will come. Right. My theory would be that you're able to get more people into your store, you'll make more money, then you can expand more into the indie market.
Okay, I buy that one. JD, how about you? Same question. $5,000 to Google ads or $5,000 with the potential upswing of $20,000 in independent comic book sales?
Damn. I probably wouldn't do either.
Take the $5,000 and blow it on hookers and angel dust.
Probably. No. Yeah, I know. It's angel dust. Meth is the new thing.
Like murder the hooker? I mean, it's like
no. I mean, I think for myself, going back to the original thing that I was saying is like, I think it's more important if I could get $5,000 worth of indie books, but I mean like at a bulk rate from indie creators, so that I can offer them to my customers at a cut rate, right? So instead of them paying maybe $5 a book, they're paying $3 a book. Right? Or we can do bundles and I'd be like, look, you can take these 10 books for $20, something like that along those lines, to try to introduce them to those titles. I think that will go a little bit further. But I think that's how I would want to roll it. But and the thing is, I wouldn't just all blow all $5,000 in one spot. I'd probably maybe put $1,000 worth of Google ads out there. But I would definitely put a bulk of it in buying books. But I'd want to get them at a bulk rate.
Go for a billboard, man. Hey, I'm just going to throw it out there. Go for a billboard in the town next door. I'm still halfway thinking about doing a billboard for a Kickstarter one of these times.
Nice. I mean, if you got that type of, the problem is like, how many people?
I'm loaded, buddy. I'm a comic book writer. Money means nothing to a guy like me. You know that.
Right,
well, I know that I know Merck had a billboard down in Indiana.
Yeah,
it was up for months. I don't know what response they got from it, but it was there for a long time.
Well, and I was being partly comical, but historically, billboard rates are relatively inexpensive advertising, and the number of cars that go past that billboard, it's a staggering number of customers that see that.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
For a comic books, I don't know about a Kickstarter. I was being facetious, but for a comic book store, I definitely would, and I would do the town over. Like in my case, I'm in South Central Pennsylvania. It's York, Pennsylvania. I'd do one 30 miles over in Lancaster. Put one over in the Amish country, where the kids got nothing to do. I'll swing by the comic store in York.
Do Amish buy comic books?
They do not, sir. They do.
Yes.
Not. So, Tom, how about you? Same question. You got $5,000 to play with in your budget for the comic book store. Is it Google ads or is it inventory for indies?
Yeah, it has to be inventory. I mean, but it also, I like JD's sort of caveat to it where, you've got to be able to, it's not just about, hey, here's a new indie book on the shelf. It's $4, $5. So is Batman. Like if you can get that rate cut down to where you can be like, it's $2, try it for $2. And it's something new, not just like 10 years ago old. That's how it's going to work. In fact, Scout just did something really interesting that I'm kind of interesting to follow. They actually just gave away a book for free to retailers. I don't remember what it was called, but it was a new book come out. And they're just like, look, however many you want, come get them. All the variants, you still have to buy the variants.
It's genius.
Yeah. And so, well, I don't know if it's genius yet. We'll see.
Well, right. Yeah.
Because they're going to eat a lot on this first issue because they got orders for like 100,000 units. Now that's great because now these retailers have a book that they can then essentially give away for free if they want to,
right?
To a customer, or
you're
maybe
really
it's a
selling number 2 and 3. Hopefully, you hope
exactly so. Right. So that's really where it comes into play. It's like, okay, now you have to buy number 2, though. Retailers, are you going to? You're not going to buy 100,000 units. Clearly, is it going to be 50,000? Which is normal attrition. It kind of cuts in half. Or are they going to be like, yo, I got to take it even lower, and it's going to be like 20,000 units. Now, 20,000 units for an indie book is still gigantic. So it's sort of over the course of the series that we have to see the numbers. But the fact that so many people were like, dude, yeah, if it's free, I'll take a whole bunch and potentially open the doors to all these customers to indie books. It's a massive risk, but it could be something that could kind of be paradigm shifting if it's done right.
What title was that, by the way? Do you
remember? We can find out.
I saw it on Bleeding Cool. I remember it.
Because I'd be curious. Because the only way I would do it is
are you sure it was
super
Scout?
confident.
I'm pretty sure it was Scout. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. And what's going to be interesting to see is how, because for myself, I got that book with my order, and I read it, and it was good. I like the cliffhanger ending at the end of it. Right. So I won't buy the second issue. Right, I'm not interested in that, but I'll probably pick up the trade. When it comes out, that's what I'm interested in. I'm not really interested in buying issues 2, 3, and 4. I'm not into buying like just single issues, but I might pick up that trade at the end. So it'll be interesting to see how that affects their trade sales.
Since you mentioned that, let's touch on that segment of the hobby, starting with Doc. So they talk about the floppy sales are way down, but graphic novel sales are up significantly. Is that just the way that people read comics now? And did manga cause this?
I don't know if manga caused it or not. I know that even I, as an old fellow who used to collect the floppies, I prefer to go in and get a big beefy graphic novel and get a whole story arc in one book as opposed to waiting month after month after month. And that's kind of what I'm doing with my own books. But I don't know what it's going to take for LCSs to thrive. I really don't. I mean, the best idea I've heard is yours. Put up a daggone billboard locally.
I got one more. This is a real thing that I do. I got a partner that I'm working with. The other thing is, we used to do a thing where the ticket also gave you, it was in a strip mall, and the ticket gave you, come for us, it was 10% off comics. Then the next guy was, I want to say it was $1 for a slice of pizza, but it might have been $2. And then after that, there was a place where it was frozen yogurt.
Yeah.
You got like a free topping or something.
Yeah, they do that here locally. The Chamber of Commerce bundles business things together, and they sell them. Well, but
but next time I'm going to do it all in one house. It's going to be a comic book store that sells ice cream, and it's going to be super expensive ice cream.
And you can definitely implement the Jelly of the Month Club.
Booze, hookers. No, billboard's a good idea because an LCS is the L stands for local. Well, that sign is local. If I buy ads on Google, the 100 people I reach in Singapore aren't going to come to my LCS. So the billboard's a good idea, but I don't know how to save LCSs because, like Tom pointed out, they're not getting support from their biggest producers, Marvel and DC. There's no tangible advertising support. There's no budget. They don't give them money to say, hey, here, buy a radio ad or a YouTube ad or some shit. They don't do that. So
they do co-op a little bit. I don't know if you guys are aware of this. They have a little bit of co-op money that comes through Diamond, and it's usually in the form of, like, I'll give you a quick, for instance. It was for comic book collectors. It was Fantastic Four 587, where the Human Torch got killed off. It's one of those plastic poly bag events. It came with like 25 variants. You could get a cake, and like it was like a cake with a big 4 on it, or excuse me, the logo was a 3, wasn't it? It was a 3 because one died. But anyway, there was a movie poster. There was like a bunch of cool stuff. And basically, when you pay the advertising budget, you send it back through Diamond, and they comp you back. I think it was up to 50% of the advertising money. So they have a little bit of that, but it's really more like what Tom said, that retailers don't try to do it. They just do it the easy way.
So real quick, it was actually Vault Comics, and it's a book called Beyond Real.
Cool. Nice.
And it's supposed to hit actually next week.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd be really curious about that one.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know about that. I'm interested in seeing how that goes. The one thing, I think we all have to get ready to try some new and unconventional techniques.
And let me add to that. Let's also try some old tried and true. Tell good stories with good art.
Yeah.
I have my 3 principles of being successful in art. 1 is you got to make art. That means be prolific and be proficient at it. 2, you got to show it to people. It means get it in front of eyeballs. And number 3, be nice. Be nice means support your product and absolutely support your backers and your customers. Do those 3 things. Bring back good stories with good art.
Yeah, JD, be nice.
No. No need for that.
So let's jump over to Alan. So Alan, we had mentioned about, the difference between the floppy sales and the graphic novel sales. It's like night and day. Like graphic novels are taking off where some of the floppies are stagnating, which now this would kind of go against what Doc's saying, because the stories maybe of the graphic novels are better, or what is it telling us, Alan? What does it mean?
I think floppies are, granted, this is me looking at it through a very narrow lens. From what I'm seeing just with myself, it seems like floppies are approaching a kind of like a collector's market type deal. You do have your loyal fans and stuff that want to pick up every issue and everything like that, but some people, like, they use issue 1 as sort of like an extended ash can, right? It's like the people that are very grateful that Netflix will release every episode of a season at one time, right? Because that way you get everything at once with the trade. But some people will treat it like they won't have that. And what I mean by that is they want to go ahead and use your issue 1 as a preview. They like it. They love it. They sing its praises, but you don't see them back until you release the trade. It's a little bit of a blow to my already fragile ego.
Right.
But
right.
it is what it is. It's easier to consume all in one go, and especially being indie. And it's obviously we all know a lot of people like this, and it is what it is. Believe this or not, guys, comic books are really expensive to make. I know that's crazy, right? But comic books are crazy expensive. And how many times have we seen a new series that looks absolutely incredible, stunning? We can't wait to see where it goes. You pick up issue 1, and issue 2 doesn't come out for 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And
that's what I was just going to hit
Yeah.
on, Alan, was that exactly.
yeah, and that's where you see a lot of people in the uptick on the trade, because they're like, oh, well, even though, let's say it's an ongoing series, well, I know the series isn't finished yet, but at least I can get issues 1 through 4 right now, and I don't have to wait. You know what I mean, for the other one, and I'll just wait for the next trade when that comes out in 5 years. So, it's I think a trade is more of a safety net, or Tim, to kind of look at the inverse of that, a one shot. I mean, it doesn't have to be a trade. It can just be like, hey, this is a one issue, a little bit bigger. It's 32 to 40 pages.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
One and done.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll see an uptick in that as well. And those
I
people
agree.
are also your trade markets. Yeah.
Yep. And you do the one and done and you move on to the next one.
Mm-hmm. I know it's hard for us because we all, we're all creators and we all have big imaginations and we want to see a lot of stuff. But sometimes it's better to just, I don't know, like I said, one and done.
So Brian had a great.
They do well on crowdfunding. I know that a lot of the time, right? One shots typically drawing a good audience because it's non-committal.
Yeah.
Brian had a great question here in the audience, which is, what are some of the favorite comic stories coming out right now, or the last ones that we read and actually enjoyed? I'd like to hear that from a couple of you guys. Mike, what are some of the best stories right now? What are you reading? What do you recommend?
Oh man, I don't read comics.
You want to skip over it?
I'm just here, man. So I'll tell you I'm very selective in what I read. And for me, Seven to Eternity was something that I recently really dug into and really enjoyed front to back. And beyond that, nothing's really stuck out to me. I've read quite a bit. I read a lot of indie. Like, obviously, I'm backing a lot of stuff on Kickstarter, so I read everything that comes through there. I could do 1,000 shout outs, but I don't want to bore all of us on here. We know what we're doing when we do that. I think that's the last time I read something that just really, really impressed me, and I genuinely just was enthralled by it and enjoyed it front to back. So,
yeah, I appreciate you. Definitely keep it real for the indie community, Mike.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see you support all the key people. I see them out there.
Okay.
So, Tom, how about you? What are the stories right now that you're following? Anything that you particularly would recommend?
I'm like Mike. I haven't bought Marvel or DC in nearly a decade. The sole exception is the most recent Batman and Robin book that came out, which I bought primarily for Simone Demau's art, which just boggles my mind. But as I read it, I actually found myself enjoying it. It was really light. It was really it wasn't the Dark Knight detective, this Frank Miller-esque guy. It was him and Damian and they're fighting White Rabbit and Man Bat and whoever else. And it just was like, this is a fun book, man. Like this guy who's writing this Batman book is writing Batman in a way I haven't seen in a long, long time. Plus the art is just mind bending. If you guys go and look at it, it's like, what the hell? How's he even doing this? So I'm really enjoying that book right now, which was a surprise. But for the most part, any other stuff that I grab, it's usually like I'm at a con and I'll find a trade paperback of something and I'll grab it. So, and it's usually old stuff. So I'm going back through the old Walt Simonson Thors at this point, because I got all those trades, A lot of the modern stuff for me, it doesn't connect anymore because it's not, and you guys talked about this earlier in the show, it's not the characters that I grew up with anymore. They're too, existentially modified for me to be like, yeah, I understand that's
Kind of what
Captain
yeah,
America, or
that's what Doc
you know,
was saying. Sure.
which freaking Ghost Rider is this? You know,
Is there
like,
an element of there? Be honest. Is there an element there of superhero burnout?
for me, no. I want to buy these books. I even bought the Wonder Woman that came out because I was a huge Wonder Woman fan.
I heard it's good.
And it's terrible. Sorry, it's terrible. But what's funny, here's the funny part, right? I've been told by other people that, oh yeah, I really like this Wonder Woman, and I never really liked her before. So what I'm hearing is that you don't like the character because you never liked her before, but you like this bizarre non-Wonder Woman thing, whatever it is. So, you know, this goes back. This is actually, I'm gonna go back to the beginning to your thing that I missed earlier. Was we were talking about what happens when these characters get modified out of their known existence into something else, right? So all these characters over time have evolved, changed, modified. 90% of them have still stayed sort of to the core of what they are, though. So, but when you start to talk about massive changes, whether you're talking about switching sexuality for whatever random reason, switching like Iron Man became Riri for a while, right? Like it wasn't even that Riri got a book. It's like she was Iron Man for a while. Like these are like really weird changes. So the thing is that if you're going to do those kinds of changes, it's okay. But you have to be aware that when you do that stuff, you're driving customers away from your book because you're giving them something that they don't want, know, or understand. So again, that's still okay as long as on the other side, for everyone that leaves, here comes a new one saying, "Oh, I am totally in on whatever this is," because then you've made a balance, right? But what we're seeing is two people leave and one person comes in, and sales are declining on that stuff. So whatever it is that you're doing to attract this quote unquote new audience, it's not working to the level it needs to work to sustain sales as they were previously.
Gotcha.
Yeah, you can't be the crazy aunt bringing over the lime jello with olives in it.
Yeah, like, you know, Riri can exist. She can have an Iron Man armor, but she can't be Iron Man. Like that's nonsense. You know what I mean? So you've got to be really careful in that regard because and here's the other thing, right? Like we talked about the age. All of us eventually, all of us are going to be like, well, this isn't my Iron Man, this isn't my Wonder Woman, this isn't whatever. We're all going to be gone. Right. And so Marvel and DC and everybody has to make these characters so that they will continue to evolve and be relevant to a new audience, but they're not doing anything to bring the audience in. If they're going to just come in and do this to check boxes off, like, look, X character is gay, and we don't see a swarm of gay customers coming in to buy the book, then it doesn't matter. Then you can have people cheering that you have the diversity. Yay, diversity, no problem. But if you're not buying the product, then we have a disconnect.
Doc, how about you? What do you?
Oh, sorry about that, Tim.
You want to wait till I come around the circle?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
So, Doc, how about you? What are some writers that you'd recommend? What kind of stories are you following?
The last good story that I read, and I just reread it, was Man Without Fear.
Oh, Frank Miller?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ramita Miller.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend any current storylines because I don't know any of them. I think it's been longer than Tom since the last time I bought one of the mainstream books. Lots of fantastic indie books out there.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if you enjoy good stories and good art, go to indies. There's something for everybody. You'll find something you like, and you'll be glad you got it.
I appreciate the shout out. JD, how about you, man? I know you got your finger on the comic collecting pulse. What are some great stories?
Yeah, I read a lot. So, I mean, I'm reading probably a couple, anywhere from 100 to 200 pages of comics a night. I read fast. But for Tom, I don't know if you've ever read it, but recently I read Wonder Woman by Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chiang.
Oh,
did you ever?
Boo!
You didn't like it? Okay.
No, seriously, boo! Because she even got golden guns for a while, man. That's a boo. That's a no.
Okay, that's fair enough. I enjoyed it. It. Low, the Compendium, that was actually pretty good. Then there's Den that Dark Horse is reprinting of
John Corbin.
What is it? Richard Corbin.
Richard Corbin. Oh wow, really?
Yeah, they're reprinting his entire library.
Wow, I'd be into that.
Yeah, and then I enjoyed Ambassadors.
Oh, I just ordered that book.
Yeah. And then there's something called Tresse, which was it's an anime that's coming out of that's on Netflix, but it was also originally I guess some comic book that came out of the Philippines. And that's a pretty interesting book. What else? That's pretty much it that I can see on this list.
Okay.
I'm just
Alan,
looking
you
at
reading
some of my...
anything? You read anything good right now that you'd recommend to the viewers?
Man, just manga. I'm rereading Berserk right now. It's good.
Oh, okay. I heard it was good. Speaking of manga, I've been reading. Well, it's one of the historical ones. It's called Onwards Toward Our Noble Deaths. And it's a story about this Japanese squad that's been left behind on some island, and they're all having dysentery and starving to death. That's where I am right now. And I also recently reread the works of Paul Chadwick. He's the guy who wrote Concrete. Yeah. Any Concrete
What else has he
fans in here?
done? What else has he done besides Concrete?
He had like one other Dark Horse project in that way. I think it was
That
pretty
was it?
much only Concrete, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there another one? If there is, I kind of don't really know it.
Don't know. It's kind of like Jeff Smith is like he really is just known for Bone.
Yeah, it is.
Even though he's done a couple of other things, but Bone is the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But were you a Concrete fan?
I was aware of Concrete. It was a little more outside my box at the time when that thing was happening, but it was a different thing and it was cool art, and you know
Yeah.
I'm
It's
aware of
good.
it. Yeah, it's one of
pretty
those
good.
things that I feel like if I ever came across it in like the trade boxes at a con, I'd be like, okay, let's have a look.
Yeah, they
Tom,
have a neat. Go ahead.
Tom, I got to ask you. So what is a particular run on Wonder Woman that you enjoyed?
Basically, honestly, well, there's a couple of little bases for it. Number one, you got to go back to the George Perez revamp after Crisis. You know, that's the key. Obviously, that's that moment. I also liked when Phil Jimenez came in many years later and was doing stuff with a lot of the gods. As they do with Wonder Woman, but he was also tying things into some of the old TV show stuff. Like he actually reincorporated the spinning to change costumes and stuff like that. So you know, Phil is a big Wonder Woman fan, and so I really appreciated how he handled the character. And then there was one that really stood out for me was where Clayface showed up in a Wonder Woman story for a couple of issues, and for those that don't know, Wonder Woman was created by clay and you know brought to life by the gods, and so I was like, oh, that's cool. So Clayface basically tried to get her because he wanted the magic clay to be part of his thing. So that was a very clever. I thought it was a very clever thing that we wouldn't have really ever thought of happening. So there are some good spots in Wonder Woman, but it's not. I can't say it's got a lot of good spots.
Gotcha. Well, so we got probably time for one more question, and then we're going to do some shout outs, and I want to hear about you guys' latest projects and where we can find you, that kind of thing. I want to circle back around. We had talked about the responsibilities of the editorial team, and this is kind of where we started off with Doc, and I wanted to sort of close on this note, because we often say things. When I say we, I mean the market. It might not be me necessarily saying it. But if we say, well, the editorial team has a responsibility to sort of continue and promote the brand in a way that's suitable for the market, right? Well, I guess my question is, who makes the decision for the editors, right? Because I guess I'll just say this, and then I'll let you guys answer. Any other job that you had, and you said, hey, well, my plan is we're selling 450,000 a month, and my plan is to take it to 6,000. They would fire you from that job. So I want to hear what you think, Doc.
I was hired as editor-in-chief at Marvel or DC. Day one, I'm walking down the hall with pink slips and a baseball bat. Cleaning house. And I'm saying, we're taking this shit back on the rails. The characters are going to be true to who they were created to be. Tell any story you want to within those brackets. Let's rock.
You think that would increase sales?
I know it would.
I admire your confidence. I'm not so sure it would.
I know it would. People want good. They don't want
Well, yeah.
They don't want bastardized versions of their heroes. This is a cathartic idealized world that we create. It's a mythology. No one wants to read about, the character's personal issues with hemorrhoid ointments. Nobody gives a shit. Tell good stories.
Right. How about you, JD? What can editors fix it? Can anything be done on an editorial level?
I think so. I mean, of course. I mean, they're the ones that are making the real decisions. The writers don't really make decisions at the big companies. It all comes down from editorial. Editorial tells them what to do and they do it. I've heard these complaints from a number of writers who are professionals that say, listen, I don't want to write this damn story. This is what my editor is telling me what to do. You understand? These are from some good writers, right? Maybe they're using that as a smokescreen. Maybe that's an excuse, but it does come from editorial. Personally speaking, like Doc said, if they appointed me EIC, there are two numbers I'd want automatically pulled out of the Rolodex or from the file or from wherever it's hidden. The two numbers: Paul Levitt to Jim Shooter. And I'd
Give me Jim Shooter right now.
Call them in and let's have them just as advisory. Let's try to get these guys in as advisory. Call in some of the older editors. Let's try to train the people. Either that we have to train the people we got, get rid of them, and get new ones that can be trained to do comics properly. And pretty much that would be my solution to it. It would be like, these people I don't think were schooled properly, and that's pretty much I think what it is. They need to be taught how to do these things correctly. And if you're not mentored into it, I think on that level, like we as independent creators, we came up ourselves and we took our own bumps and lumps. Up there, you got smacked in the head, and they were like, dude, you're doing it wrong, right? I can't tell you how many stories. One that I know of, Louis Small Jr. was one time. My understanding is he was drawing something. He was drawing a picture. He was working in Neil Adams' studio. He was drawing a picture. He was having a hard time. Neil walks by. Neil sees him. He says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "I'm trying to draw this picture." And he has the reference right next to him. And Neil slides the picture underneath, puts it on a light box, and says, "Listen, just trace it." He says, "You trace it enough times, you're going to be able to draw in the future, but you need to get this done right now. Get moving. This is work." Right? And he says, it is what it is.
Yes.
Sometimes you got to go a little old school to move forward.
Absolutely.
It worked for 70 years. I don't see why it can't work for another 20 or 30.
It wasn't broke. It didn't need fixing.
Let's move over here to Alan. Alan, what do you think? Do you agree with what's being said here? Is it editorial or is it market conditions? What do you think?
Honestly, I really don't know. I think that, I agree with what Mike said earlier. Everyone's just trying something new. And there's already so many stories, and I think that they're trying to take a chance to not tell the same story that's already been told. But for better or for worse, it's the risk that they're taking, and time will sort everything out, and then we'll have the stories that we feel like we need to have, and they'll all take shape and place.
It makes a lot of sense when you say it like that. Mike, how about you? Are the editors just running wild, or do you think it's more to do with the market?
I have no clue. I'm new to all of this, honestly. I really am. So yeah, I can just. That's a loaded question.
It really is.
Well, all right. So if we're here to pick a team, I think the editors obviously influence the direction more than anything else, right? They're the ones that are actually making those executive level decisions on this is the story that we're going to tell, and this is why we're doing it, and why we think the market's going to respond positively to it, or why we think it's right now a good time to send a message with this story arc or whatever, whatever it is, whatever their intent is, the editors are the ones making those decisions. So I think a lot rests on them to make the right decisions. But there's got to be a healthy amount of risky decisions too. I think we're in an age where we probably need to take some risks, honestly.
I agree with that.
So I kind of support the idea that, hey, let's be innovative with some characters. Let's find out how this character relates to a new generation of people. It's fine to take some tests, and listen, the numbers will tell you if it worked or not, right? and the numbers have been, pretty much negative. We've seen probably, at least if we're looking at everything from a cinematic standpoint, making decisions to make changes doesn't always yield better financial results. And I think you learn and adapt to that. But there's always a residual impact that comes from doing these things too. We won't see those results right away. And there might be longer term value to taking risks like that. So I think the editors are important. And I think that they should be able to have the ability to take some risks with things creatively.
Yeah, I agree with the part about the risks, Mike. I think that's a good way. It's a healthy way to look at change. So, Tom, you get the last word, buddy. So the first thing is, are comics dying? And if so, how much of it is editorial impact? Go ahead, Tom.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the problem with editorial risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Comics are in such a state right now that if we're not seeing these results, because right now, like we just said, the results are poor. They're declining sales. We can look at it and see it. It's happening. That's your result. Now, if you want to talk about long-term results, we're not going to have long-term if the sales keep dwindling. The stores
Right.
will be gone.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to find a balance to this. Okay. You have to find a way to take your risks. Like we're going to do X, Y, and Z, but you have to maintain a core audience for your product that isn't walking away without being replaced by your risks. And right now, 5 years, if they keep going the same way, comic shops don't exist, because there's nothing that tells me that that creativity is, as it stands now, is working to attract a new audience. It's just not there.
And by the way, that's a great final word, and a terrific topic for the next show is how to cultivate that next generation of collectors, buyers, readers, of comics fans for the next generation. Matter of fact, I think, was that one of your topics, JD? It sounds like one that would be yours.
I've covered it.
I've stolen most of mine from JD. So
I covered it, and believe it or not, not this weekend, but the following weekend, I'm doing an all ages panel.
I'll see you on Sunday night, right? Isn't that your show?
Yes.
All right, perfect. I'm looking forward to that. Hey, guys, let's do this. Let's do a quick lightning round. We got about 6 minutes. So if you could please tell the audience who you are, where we can find you, and if you've got a project that you want to shout out, lay it on us right now. Start with Doc. We'll go around in a circle.
I'm Doc Blalock. I'm a writer and an artist. I've been making art professionally for 35 years. Currently, A Damn Dirty Thing is in sign up over at darkgiftcomics.com. It is a supernatural noir story done in black and white, and is a throwback to the beautiful days of the golden age of Hollywood.
Well, good luck with that. I love your artwork, Doc.
Thank you.
It's really great. JD, how about you? Tell us who you are.
My name is JD Calderon. I'm the writer and creator of the Oswald Chronicles and Tall Tales, and you can find me on just about everywhere under JD Calderon. And you can find me Sunday nights. I'll be hanging out with Tim. Sometimes I hang out with Tom. And if you guys ever want to come on, let me know. Reach out. If you guys ever have a books to promote, just let me know. You can come on. And we promote and talk about the business of indie comics every Sunday night. Indie Comics Explained on YouTube.
Thanks, JD. That's a good show, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've watched a few times. Yeah.
So, Alan, how about you? Tell us who you are and where we can find you.
Yeah, I'm Alan, and I've done a lot of stuff with Bad Bug, and we do have a lot of stuff coming up too, which I'm really excited about. I don't know if Mike wants to talk about it yet or not, but working in this indie space, man, has just been a blast. And yeah, you can just I guess find us where Kickstarter. I guess that's like the biggest thing, right? Find us on Kickstarter. It's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show too, Alan. It's good to see you.
Yeah, no problem, man.
All right.
Nice cap.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah.
So, Mike, how about you? Everybody knows Mike, I know, but tell us who you are and where we can find you and what you want to promote.
Just go to badbugmedia.com. We're on Kickstarter. You can find me on Facebook, making an ass out of myself. So, and then we have a comic called No More Gods that's on Kickstarter right now. And
Looks amazing, by the way, Mike.
Thanks, man. yeah, I don't want to go on and on about that. Ta-da!
Well, hey,
I'm
man,
Mike.
I wish
I'm the
you-
creative
yeah.
director of Bad Bug Media. I probably should have mentioned that part. So,
Yeah, man, Mike, we love you a lot over here, and I wish you every success with that project.
hey, wish you all success and appreciate you saying that. But we all ships rise with the tide, as they say. So, I really enjoy conversation with all of you guys about topics like this. It helps me kind of
Stay
look at
sharp.
things different ways. So appreciate it.
Yeah, you had some good answers. And Tom, how about you? You're probably the most well-known out of any of us, I'd bet. But tell us where we can find you.
What? I'm Tom Hutchison. I'm the writer, publisher, art director, packaging dude for all things Big Dog Inc. We're wrapping up 13 years of Big Dog Inc. this year. We just finished our Princesses versus Zombies campaign, and next year we bring back the Critterverse, our superhero book Critter. The Critterverse is back full steam next year, both on Kickstarter for brand new issues, as well as Antarctic Press picking up our series and bringing it back to retail stores. It's in previews now, and it'll be actually hitting stores in February.
Nice. Well, congratulations on everything, Tom.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So in closing, we're just right at the time. So first off, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in, and special thanks to the guests for coming on tonight to talk about this interesting topic. I feel like we could actually go quite a bit longer. It's a lot of answers, and man, we're just trying to figure it out. My name's Timothy Fling. I'm a writer and creator from York, Pennsylvania. Thanks for tuning in. This is an episode of The Creative Cranium. We'll see you guys next week.